Hello, and welcome to our conversation with Barracuda. I'm Alex Rayburn, CMO at COOLSPIRiT, and I welcome along with me today Steve Peake, Pre-Sales Manager of Barracuda. During the next 10 minutes or so, we'll be discussing security of data in the modern workplace, including Office 365, and why it needs protecting. So at that, Steve, we'll dig into the first question, if that's okay.
Yeah, let's go.
Steve, over the recent years, we've seen more and more customers moving data away from central locations to multiple places, including the cloud. What risk does this bring?
Yeah, so you are right. I think organizations have adopted the SaaS platform. They've adopted the idea that they can get higher availability, greater redundancy, greater expansion within cloud-based services. And so what that brings is customers moving data out of their, if you like, the castle, that ring-fenced, secure environment, and they're moving it and putting it into these third-party systems. You think about Salesforce as a sales tool, as an example. We think about we think about Barracuda as a security vendor. But actually, the biggest and one of the largest ones out there is Office 365. If you think about how many organizations are using Office 365 today to not only move email around, but also look at other services within the platform. Those services give a huge guarantee of uptime and availability. However, your data remains your responsibility. And so you have to consider those cloud platforms as though they were yours, as though they were still yours to look after.
Yeah, even though it was busy before with Office 365, the rise has been exponential, hasn't it, in the use of it? And I think COVID definitely brought that along.
Yeah, COVID accelerated organizations' plans. I spoke to many organizations over the past 18 months who said they had a cloud project that was going to take them into the next 5 years, and they turned it around within 4 to 5 weeks.
Yeah.
It really was accelerated, and what we're not seeing is businesses moving backwards. They've now got the benefits of SaaS and cloud, and Office 365 collaboration is one big driver for staying there.
We'll just focus on Office 365 if that's okay, just for a moment.
Yeah, sure.
We hear that organizations move to Office 365, presuming that just because it's Microsoft hosting the data, it's secure, but I understand it isn't. Can you tell me why?
Yeah, I think so. It comes back to that point I made a moment ago, which is organizations move their data to these services, but actually what the service providers supply is a guarantee around uptime, a guarantee around availability, and a guarantee around how their services will interact between each other. What they don't say is, and we will look after your data for you and make sure that if it was broken, deleted, destroyed, we'll keep a copy. And so what really they're giving you is what they're talking about is actually giving you the responsibility, but under what's known as a shared responsibility model. And so they're taking responsibility of that platform, and they're keeping that platform up and running and secure from that perspective. But actually, you still have to maintain and ensure that your data is secure. And so whether that's by putting the right security mechanisms in outside of Office 365, or whether that is about having a backup solution and a separate copy of your data, so that if something does happen to the system and happen to your data, you have separate copies, just like we used to do when all our data was in our own data centers.
Back in the good old days.
Yeah, we move on. We can't get stuck in the old days.
And I hear from our guys, I hear that your system to actually protect, to be upfront place in order to actually protecting data is very, very quick. Half an hour installs sort of story.
Yeah, no, it's exactly that. So Barracuda has an Office 365 backup solution. It backs up not only email, because email is obviously one of our key areas and one of the areas we see people moving to Office 365 before, but we actually also look at the likes of OneDrive, SharePoint, and Microsoft Teams. Deploying that solution is been made so straightforward and efficient that, like you say, in reality, you could in 10-15 minutes be up and running, taking that first backup. You may have some troubleshooting to look at. We'll identify maybe that there's some data that needs updating or changing, but really getting it online and getting that first copy is really, really straightforward and simple.
Good to know. And just that brings me on to my next question. Actually, you mentioned it's not just email. There's many other parts of Office 365. Organisations are trusting the platform for so many integral communications and planning activities in the business. Does Barracuda help with more than just email?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I mentioned, so organizations very frequently move to Office 365 for email. It's a driver that Microsoft are pushing, and it's something that they are aiming to have everyone using their Exchange Online system. However, once organizations are there, OneDrive usage increases. So rather than having your own, if you like, your own personal drive, move to OneDrive. We see SharePoint, so file servers that were traditionally on-prem, they're being moved into SharePoint. And we're also seeing, due to the pandemic, a huge boom and increase in Microsoft Teams usage. All of those services hold data. All of those services require you to have a backup of the system. And I think it's really important, I don't think I mentioned it before, is that actually Microsoft within their service agreement actually state you should take a third party copy of this data. So it's not just Barracuda coming along and saying, hey, you should be doing this. Actually, Microsoft recommend it in your own T's and C's that you've signed up to.
And is it fair to say that Barracuda pretty much protects everything Office 365 as a suite can offer, or do you have to sometimes wait for APIs to be available, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, the Office 365 backup world is slightly different to on-premise. There is restrictions in some areas around what you can back up or restore. But I think what I'd say is for the areas that we've mentioned, so Exchange, OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams, we are backing up what organizations are asking for us today. I'm sure that will evolve like it always does, but as it evolves and as those questions come up, what we're finding is actually Microsoft are releasing those interactions as well. And so very much it's keeping up with the market pace.
Yeah, sounds good. So I guess moving away from that a little bit, from your experience, what top 3 tips would you give to an IT team?
Yeah, I think so. It really comes down to the considerations of your data. So firstly, know where your data is, know what systems you've got in use, know where you're storing your data and the type of data that is being stored. I think you need to then consider how you look after that data, whether that is you need to take a backup of it and use a system. Did your original backup solution do that adequate enough? Do you need it to introduce a new tool into the mix? But also consider the security side of it. Who has access to that data? Does it need a security mechanism in front of it to protect it? If you look at other videos we've done with you, Alex, talking about web applications and email security, does all that need to be considered? So really it's about knowing your data and where you are putting it. And then when you know that, you can then make the decisions around the type of access and management. On top of that, and very closely coupled, is how much data you retain and how long for, and also which users you have active in the platforms and what access they have. So as an example, with Office 365, do you keep your users licensed and active with a license because you need to store their data for so many years? Well, we can fix that with a backup as an example. And so that's a great example about how you could potentially save and make some savings across your organization.
Brilliant. No, that's some good tips. Thank you. And savings, that brings me on to my last question, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Even though customers obviously pay for your solution, can you help them actually save money as well?
Yeah, I think we can. So I think when we look at Office 365, one of the challenges that organizations have is what do they do with the data? Office 365 gives you retention policies. It gives you short-term recycle bin methods. But actually, if you want to save, if you want to keep the data for a long time in an easy way to consume, you have to keep licenses in play. That means organizations end up with license costs spiraling and increasing over time. And so what we're able to do is by taking those copies of data, organizations can confidently reallocate licenses, keep their license count to the right level, and ultimately know they've got a copy of data within the backup solution that's separate to its retention policies and separate to what's happening in the Office 365 world. I think that's one of the big saving and key aspects that we see out of the platform and the use cases we see from our customers.
That's great. Well, thank you very much for your time, Steve. I really appreciate it. insightful conversation, and I look forward to speaking to you again.
Thanks, Alex. Been great.